Hello, and welcome to the Simply Business Interview Podcast, a podcast created by business owners for business owners. I am your host, John Jennings. And I believe that most business owners are working way too hard for much too little. And one of our issues is that we overcomplexify things. I believe the answers are almost always within us or within our reach. I like to say that I'm a simple man with simple ideas. So welcome to Simply Business. All right, today we are joined by Thomas Haun. I'm really excited to hear this story about Turner Staffing Group. He's the president and one of the founders of that. We're just looking forward to hear that story. Thomas, we start with just introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about where you are, what you do.
Sure. Thanks, John, for having me. Really appreciate it. Thomas Haun, been married to my wife, Michelle, for 15 going on 16 years. So that's amazing. Two kiddos, 9, almost 10-year-old boy and a 7, almost 8-year-old girl, Thomas and Anna. They're amazing. They take after their mother, so that helps a ton. But yeah, happy to be here. As you said, I'm the president of Turner Staffing Group. Really fun and interesting company, and I know we'll get into kind of the backstory a little bit. But yeah, we have a great team of people, and that just makes a huge difference. We're a big values-oriented company, and when we think about our values, we always think human first. So our values are literally things like about people, not just kind of like ethereal concepts. So we have 4 values. The first of which is a heart for people. The second of which is an eye for safety. The third of which is a mind for innovation. And the fourth of which is an attitude for excellence. And I love them because, again, a company is nothing but a group of people trying to go accomplish a mission. And having our values really focused on the individual, we think, or the person we think is really important.
That's very cool. I haven't heard values. I mean, I do values all the time with clients. I haven't heard that kind of approach of the heart and the eyes and the mind. It's cool.
It's fun. It's fun.
I have to process that a little more. So,
sure.
So tell us about how Turner Staffing Group came about. I know that's an interesting story.
Yeah. So it is a fun backstory. So we'll have to go back actually pre-Turner Staffing Group to a company called Turner Mining Group. So Keaton Turner and Gan Elmore founded Turner Mining Group really because they felt that there was a need for professional service provider, field service provider in the mining industry. It happens in oil and gas companies like Halliburton, Schlumberger, Baker Hughes, large multinational field services companies. In mining, it's actually kind of missing. And so especially domestically here in the US. There's a couple firms in Australia that do this at scale, but domestically in the US, you might have a heavy civil company who, works on highways, roads, bridges, who also happens to do mining, but oftentimes doesn't, not a mining first company. So saw that gap. Keaton had experience in that space, and hence kind of the creation of Turner Mining Group. I knew Gant previously, he was a friend of mine. And so he introduced me to Keaton. And really the 3 of us ran Turner Mining Group kind of from a day-to-day basis after I got introduced to Keaton in 2018. Keaton founded the company in 2017. And as I was getting introduced to him, fun little anecdote is the 3 of us made promises to each other. Because we viewed having a field services company as kind of requiring these 3 things. So the first was Keaton promised to Gant and myself that we would always have good projects and good work for the company to go do. Because as a contracting style company, you need to have the right style of work in front of you. Gant promised. Gant has always had a financial background. So Gant promised to Keaton and myself that we would always have the financing that we needed to be available, so that way we could purchase equipment or go really, pursue the growth and investment in the company that we knew we were going to need to have. And then my promise to both Keaton and Gant was that we would always have the team of people, really kind of like what I would consider our rock stars, to go make all of this happen, right?
Mhm.
Actually do the work, actually make sure that our customers are satisfied, actually make sure that our employees are satisfied, and really build out that team. So that's all Turner Mining Group. And so it's like, well,
Yeah.
how does that
Eh,
company create a staffing firm?
That's that's actually such a great learning before we jump into the staffing group.
Yeah.
That as a business coach, I work with a lot of partnerships. Some of them are family businesses, some are not, but I see that unequally yoked leadership, all the
Oh,
time,
sure.
right?
Sure.
One person is like, well, I'm putting in sweat equity, or I'm putting in, but you all kind of
Ah,
came into it with this kind of trilateral type thing.
yeah.
I'm
Three legs of
making
a
up a
stool,
word.
if you want to think of it that way. Sure.
Yeah, and you
It's
all had
we
the responsibility.
and I like your unequally yoked comment. So what I would say is we took the time to think about like what are the key things we need for the business to succeed. So that conversation was had really before I even joined, right? And so when when you take that intentional time up front,
Mhm.
I found that to be the best time spent, the best time invested, if you want to think of it that way. And
Sure.
then we were able to kind of lay out, okay, we are always going to need good quality work and scopes of work. We are always going to need financing and access to capital and all those things because mining is a capitally intensive business.
Yeah.
And then we're always going to need the team to go perform all of that. And so having kind of those three legs of a stool ended up becoming really important. And then how that morphed into Turner Staffing Group is, we were about 4 years into Turner Mining Group, and we had had a ton of success in attracting talent.
Mhm.
Frankly, way beyond our wildest dreams. We're talking tens of thousands of applicants in a given year, and I'll tell you what it was for us through at least for the first 11 months of 24 here in a minute. But basically, Turner Mining Group was never going to get the ability to really tap into and leverage this community.
Mhm.
And these are hardworking people who really know an honest day's work and really want to go perform and make an impact, resonate with our values, are attracted to what we try to do here at Turner. Um, and what that morphed into was we wanted to find other ways to go deploy, and we truly do think about deploying our people similarly to how the military would think about it
Mhm.
for a tour of duty. And so, um, yeah, we got together and started kind of kicking around different ideas of how we could think about making the industry impact we wanted to make. Um, and staffing firm got brought up. It's like, hey, look,
Mhm.
we've had clients ask us, okay, we don't really need a full contractor. We just need a crew. Or,
Mhm.
hey, we don't really need all this equipment. We already have it. Can you just come manage this for us? Or, hey, I don't even need a full crew. I really need these three layers of expertise. And so we're sitting there thinking, okay, I think there's a business here. And I think it's something that frankly, probably more importantly, that our community of talent wants.
Mhm.
Our community of individuals are people that tend to skew a little younger than the average in the mining industry. They
Mhm.
tend to want to use their next opportunity as a way to vault into their career. Could be a pivot from a different industry into this industry, could be, hey, you guys will offer me a promotion based on my merit and skills. Whereas I might, in my current company, have three layers of management above me and they're not at retirement age, so I don't have a spot to go.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
lots of reasons, but they kind of viewed Turner as a propellant, if you will, from a career perspective and a life perspective. And so having a staffing firm that can offer the next tour of duty, the next set of responsibility for an individual just became really appealing.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, the three of us founded the firm. Day to day, I now run Turner Staffing Group. Keaton day to day runs Turner Mining Group, and Gant is affiliated with a portfolio of firms. And so he's constantly, jumping in and
Yeah.
jumping out. But yeah, that's kind of our founding story. It's a fun one and a little bit of a different one.
Yeah, that is interesting. So you're talking about people who are going into mines, right? I mean, these are
Oh
you're
yeah,
saying
oh yeah.
because
We
I've
have
had
people.
I have a mining client actually, and I've been down in their mines, and and we've had those conversations about some people show up for the first day of work and by noon they're like clocking out going, I'm done.
Yes.
I can't work in this environment. So
Yeah,
you're
we try to share a lot up front, so we're a pretty transparent firm, sometimes even to our detriment. But we would rather kind of skew that way, and our goal is that we're giving people a glimpse before they're ever walking into a mine. And so, yeah, it's interesting, with social media tools and things like that, it has helped bring down some of that kind of information barrier. Um, but yeah, you still got to make sure that you're having very open, upfront, and kind of very blunt, in some ways, conversations with individuals before they're caught off guard. Yeah, we have. I like to say we have folks, and this is true. We have folks spread all across the U.S. So there are mines in Fairbanks, Alaska, and outside of Fairbanks, Alaska, and we have folks
oh
there.
wow.
And there are mines in very, very southern Florida, like in the Miami area, and we have folks
Mhm.
there. And so you can kind of put different ends of the United States on
Yeah.
different ends of the spectrum and say, all right, we got people on the ends and really everywhere in between. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, mining is a space that oftentimes is misunderstood,
Yeah.
but frankly is just critical, right? It's the beginning of the supply chain.
Yeah. I mentioned I have a client that's in mining and they're pulling out limestone, and
Yes.
I thought growing up, mining meant coal, like here in
Yes.
Kentucky, mining means coal means mining. It's all the same
Yep.
thing. And I didn't really know until many years later that there's all sorts of mining going around,
Oh
lots of
yeah,
different things
we
that people are.
there's a phrase I've in a previous stint in my career worked in agriculture, and really agriculture or mining are the beginning of supply chains.
Hmm.
There's a phrase that kind of articulates this really well. If you just like look around at everything around you, it was either grown or it was mined. And
Mm,
so wherever, your phone came from, right? Like it's basically mined, right?
you're
The
right.
glass comes from sand out of the ground. The metals that are in it come from other mining activities. Like it's basically a mined thing. The food on your table is grown, right? And, the cotton that's in my shirt is grown, right? And so,
Right.
basically either the beginning of the supply chain is in agriculture or it is in mining. And yeah, it's
That's
mining's a
interesting.
really interesting space.
Not thought about that. That's interesting. So what's been kind of the biggest surprise for you? You're as the founder, and now you got this thing up and going and doing well, sounds like, but there's always some surprises. What was the biggest
Oh,
surprise
sure.
spinning off?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think there's a bunch, right? Well, again, I always come back to people. Um, I think probably on the positive side, the biggest surprise has been watching people just step into new leadership roles and just own them. You always hesitate, like, oh, can can they bite this off, or should I give them this stretch assignment or anything like that?
Hmm.
And just watching people just knock them down has just been an awesome, pleasant surprise. On the more kind of like constructive side, I would also go to the people. Sometimes there are individuals that you can see the potential in, and they're not seeing it in themselves, and that is just a really hard situation. You're trying to pull it out of them, and they're kind of resisting some of that, and maybe even like, we, as we were talking about before, I'm in several different leadership groups and things like that, and there's these different frameworks, and one of them that I think is really powerful it's a little book called The Power of TED, and TED stands for the empowerment dynamic. And the kind of framework in an oversimplification is, look, in any context or any situation, you have a choice. You can either kind of fall into a victim mindset where things are happening to you, you have no agency,
Mm,
things like that, and there's a dynamic that is associated with that, and it's not empowerment.
right.
And then the opposite can happen. in that same set of contexts, you can view it as an opportunity to create. And they call that a creator mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And, when it pains me that there have been individuals on our team that have fallen into that victim mindset. And so that's been, and again, you're screening people, you're testing them and doing all these things. And then when they fall into that victim mindset, that's probably been the most kind of disheartening surprise, because
Yeah.
you're hoping that you as a leader are helping pulling them into a creator mindset, and when that doesn't happen, it's
Yeah.
on you as a leader. And yeah, that's probably the biggest disappointment, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah. We talked about victor victim. Are you going to be a victor? Are you
Yes,
going to be a victim?
absolutely.
Victim is blaming and making excuses, and they're negative, and they have that scarcity
Yep.
mindset. While the victor, is proactive and positive and
Yes.
optimistic and future thinking. And I love the abundance mindset, idea.
Yes.
When I
Yes.
first started my consulting business 6 years ago, 7 years ago now, I guess, uh, I would get aggravated or frustrated. I'd see another coach out there and I'd go, oh, and then
Hmm.
eventually I realized, you know what? They're busy. I'm busy. We're all busy. There's there's
Oh yeah.
there's plenty of
There,
work to
there,
go around. And
there always is.
once you kind of get past that, a win for him doesn't mean a loss for me, and vice versa. It humbles you, but also keeps your mind going in the right direction and
Yeah,
bring.
and I have both just from a like a foundational beliefs perspective, but I think challenge can be the thing that reveals to you and to others like some special gifting that you have, right? And
Yeah.
so, um, there are phrases like iron sharpens iron and things like that.
Mm.
It just, I think if things are just on coast mode, you're not really going to grow and stretch into the potential that you can be.
Mhm.
Keaton often tells a story. There's a gentleman by the name of Ed Milet.
Oh, I
And
love Ed
again,
Milet. He's one
okay,
of my
so
favorites.
you've probably heard this, but Ed tells a story, and I'm going to do it a disservice, but it's awesome, and it's something that I think people, if they have a faith outlook that maybe I do or Keaton does, this would hopefully resonate. And so Ed, you know, he passes away and he's headed towards the pearly gates. And he says, he's like making out a couple figures, and he's like, oh, one of them is, maybe it's Jesus, and like there to meet him. He goes, but he sees this other figure, and it's kind of kept hidden from Ed's point of view. And so, Jesus is like, Ed, welcome, let's kind of go in. And Ed's like, okay, well, who's that over there? And Jesus says, well, actually, I'd like you to meet him. He's the person that you could have become.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting concept, and I won't bore you with the rest of it, but like
No,
the
it is. It
fact
is.
that you can then start to think about what you could become and what all those challenges that have been put in your life, if you weren't the victim and were the victor or the creator,
Yeah.
what could that have made you and sharpened you? And Ed, because of this, has many, things that he does on a daily basis. He always says, do one more rep. And Ed's this
Yeah.
huge buff guy. And so he always says, like, I'm going to do one more repetition of this exercise, because that's like showing I can do that one more, and really pushing towards
Hmm.
that potential boundary. And it's just a neat way of kind of thinking about, hey, look, like, again, if you have a faith similar to mine, there are reasons why things happen. And we should be viewing those things as reasons from, frankly, um, a much more omnipresent, omniscient source that
Hmm.
isn't, our limited viewpoint. We can get in an argument with our spouse, right? Because our viewpoint is so narrow and their viewpoint might be different, right? And
Right.
this is like, well, hold on, like I need to think a lot more holistically about this. And so, yeah, I love that Ed tells that. And it's something that I think is just a really important reframing whenever you're going through tough stuff.
Yeah. He's a cool guy. I love his podcast. It's one I listen to all the time.
Yeah.
One of his podcasts, if you ever listen to it, it opens up with this like it's like the guy that does the boxing announcing
Yes.
on it,
Yes.
and he mispronounces his name, and
Yes.
he spent like 10 grand hiring this guy to introduce his show, and he mispronounces his name. And Ed Milet, just so you know, he's a multi-billionaire. He owns
Oh
his
yeah. Oh yeah.
private island. He lives on an island.
Yep.
He's filthy rich. But he was too embarrassed to go back and ask the guy to re-record.
Yes. Yes.
And so it's kind of like this permanent kind of reminder that he's got this humility about him.
Yes.
Like I realize I'm one of the wealthiest people on the planet, but I'm not going to go ask this guy to
Nope.
repronounce my name.
Nope. No. And it is funny.
That,
But he's such a great example. And there are many others, right? But like when I think about what am I trying to do as a leader of an organization, it's trying to speak that truth into people and
mhm,
make them think about, oh, maybe it is more than just kind of my narrow kind of vision on something. There's a lot more context normally than what we always see. And if I can approach any situation with a mindset of creating or learning or growing, um, it's just a healthier way to live.
yeah,
And our, we have a purpose statement for Turner, right?
mhm.
And it's a little bit different for Turner Mining Group than Turner Staffing Group because they play in a
Oh,
little bit
sure.
different spaces. But
Yeah.
the beginning is the same. It is to make life better
Mm,
for, and then for Turner Mining Group, it's the mining industry. And for Turner Staffing Group, it's for the backbone of America. And
mm,
we also played on backbone because we're talking about people, right?
yeah.
And so it's a really important thing that when we're talking about bringing folks into Turner, it's yes, we have great roles and great tours of duty and good pay and all those things. I think all that's table stakes. What our hope is that we're making their life better and then they are able to make others' lives better.
Yeah.
That impact lens is important to us.
Well, one of you started off talking about your values and those four values, which I love. I'm gonna go back and write them down. But um, a lot of people create values and they write them down or they put them on a wall or whatever, and they go, "Oh, that's our values," and then they immediately go and treat people like garbage.
Yes.
And like yours said was heart for people was first one, right?
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
uh, and then they'll turn right around and go, sorry, your mom was in Iraq, but you need to be at work tomorrow, and
Correct. Correct.
that's not having so talk about that. How do you make sure you're living your values every day?
Yeah, I mean, one is you just need to be accountable to them, right? So when we talk about our organization and our teams, we want free flowing feedback, right?
Mhm.
Back to the transparency thing, it's like, hey, if you're seeing someone not living our values, we need to call that out. Now we need to do it in the right way, right?
Mhm.
Just because someone else isn't showing a heart for people doesn't mean we're not going to go show them a heart for people, right? Because it's definitely a kind of in every direction thing. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a team accountability piece. Uh, I think there's an individual accountability piece, right? Like, what are you doing so that you are surrounding yourself with people who are pushing you forward, not weighing you down
Mhm.
from a values perspective, from a growth perspective. Um, yeah, I think, you know, we, when we get into any situation, and again, our team has been doing this now for a little while, but like we are looking through a values lens. Now,
Mhm.
a heart for people does not mean letting people off the hook, right? I
Right.
always use the example of, my son plays baseball and basketball and all these things, and I help coach teams, right? And we all know this. dad coach is the hardest on his own kid, right?
If he's a
And
good coach.
so,
Yeah.
exactly. And so it's not a heart for people isn't go easy on people. I think loving people is actually sometimes being the most accountable and holding them to the highest standard. And
Yeah.
so, truly having a heart for them, I don't think, and we've explained that to our organization, right? Where it's like, look,
Mhm.
what we don't mean is like let things go by that should not be going by. But I use that analogy of the dad sports coach because, again, a
Yeah.
lot of us have played youth sports and we know, I mean, my dad is the hardest on me on the team. And so it's
Yeah.
like, okay, like, and it's not because my dad doesn't love me. My dad loves me and is so grateful for everything that I've been able to do. And that kind of lens of like truly loving someone and truly having a heart for them, I think can be so much more than just like a superficial, oh, I'm just going to let them do whatever they want
Mhm.
um, type of thing. So, yeah, I mean, but you're right. It's something that needs to be communicated from the top. It's something that needs to be shown in explicit detail from like a decision making perspective. We do a lot of explaining of why. So, not just what a decision is, but why did we make that decision and how that integrates our values in a very authentic way.
Well done.
That's important. And so, communication, clarity, these standard things that I think are best practice um, need to be done. And again, luckily, we've been doing them for a little while now, and the team, you know, oftentimes is coming with the solution that is values oriented, right? They're
Yeah.
not necessarily even coming with the issue anymore. It's like, hey, here was the issue. Here's how it was solved, and here's how that was
Right.
communicated and aligned with our values. That is like the
That's
best.
beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah. When that happens, I'm like, okay, this is great.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But
there's a
it
lot of
starts, the lesson there starts from the top, and you're holding each other accountable. You're seeing it every day. It's not like, oh, today we're going to focus on people, but
yes, yes,
tomorrow we're looking at finances, and
no,
who cares
no.
about no, you got to live it every day, even when it's difficult. Yeah, and it's not.
And I would say that if your values are the right values for your organization, if you think at a at a kind of strategic enough level that when you make the values choice, you are making the best choice for the organization. And
Yeah.
where I'm going with this is you made the comment about like, are we thinking about people or are we thinking about finances? And I love this because we've talked about this many a time inside of Turner. There's this old phrase that says something like, a CFO asked a CEO, man, we're spending all this time training our people and then they get skilled up and then they leave. Look at all that cost that the company is absorbing from doing that. And the CEO turns around to the CFO and goes, could you imagine if we didn't train our people and they
Yeah.
stayed?
Yeah.
And it's this reframing that I love because most of the time when people are thinking penny pinching ways, they're not thinking about the long term impact of that penny pinching way. And so
Yeah.
when people say, oh, the better financial decision is X or Y, it's like, I often ask, over what horizon? Because
Right.
sure, maybe it would be better to save money training for the next 3 months. But the reality is that's probably going to hurt our business 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, and probably at an order of magnitude greater than the investment level. So,
Yeah.
oftentimes, even when we're thinking about our values, it is thinking about making a decision that is optimal, not for the near term, but actually for the long term growth, the long term robust kind of organization that we are aspiring to build.
Yeah. I actually had a similar conversation once with a CFO of a healthcare company, long-term care company, and
Sure.
they have terrible turnover. I mean,
Yeah.
to be blunt, they're paying McDonald's wages to change adult diapers. It's
Yeah.
it is
Yep.
for someone who's had parents in those facilities, I
Mhm.
know it's a tough way to earn a living. And
Yes.
and so the CFO is like, John, turnovers is brutal. We're tired of investing in people and they turn around and quit. So we're gonna stop
Yep.
investing in people until they've been here at least 90 days.
Oh,
And I said, and I won't say his name. I just said,
yep.
I said, that sounds like a financial solution to a human problem.
Yes. Yes. And to think that person now is not going to get invested in for 90 days at the
And so they're going
60
to
day
turnover's
mark.
going to
At
go.
the exactly, it's going to go higher. At the 30
Yeah.
day mark, they're going to be like, no one's taught me how to do anything. I'm out of here. So, yeah, it is. And that's where I think spending time, whether we talked about like what are the important kind of critical business elements and having leadership kind of own a piece of those. Um, Thinking very thoughtfully through your values and what matters to your organization's long-term success. Thinking through what the purpose of the company is. Like these are tools that Turner did not invent. We
Yeah.
are just using them and applying them to our circumstance. And I think it is critical to how we build a long-term sustainable in like the best way organization, right? Not sustainable like hit some,
Yeah.
carbon credit or whatever.
Right.
Like
Right.
sustainable, like this thing is going to live on beyond Keaton, myself, Gant, and really create positive impact both for our people, but also for our partners and our clients, right? And so just that aspiration, I think if you have that in your business, can be a really effective tool for focusing on the things that matter and then therefore deriving priorities from it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you this, I could probably talk to you for another 2 hours, but
Same,
I
John, same.
I had a feeling when we started this, I'm like, this is going to be this has been like a master class for people on leadership.
No,
Um,
I don't know about that. I think we
oh,
leverage a lot of tools of people who've
well, I
done
tell you
some
what,
really good
you're
stuff.
like most great leaders I know, you are humble, and that goes well as well. So I don't know what's going to be the number one learning out of this, but I always kind of end with this type question of if
Sure.
someone out there is looking to start their own business and take that jump into a leadership role, um, is there one of these things that stands out as the most important thing? Is there something we haven't mentioned that you would say, yeah, you need to do
Yeah,
this?
I'd probably just ask it as a question. What is the impact you're trying to make? Is probably the
Mm,
question I would ask. Um, and it doesn't mean you have to go build $1 billion organization and become Ed my life. It's not
yeah,
that, right? So, um, but I think if you can't answer that question, I would say pause
yeah,
uh, until you can answer that question, because that's really going to be your North Star, right? And
absolutely.
so, um, and you
And
know this as well as
if you're people call it their why, Simon Sinek, all that, but
oh yeah,
if your why is very self-serving, you better go back to the drawing board.
yes,
I
you
talk to a
better,
lot of people go, well, I want to do this to you know support my my why is my kids. They'll bring a picture of their and I'm like,
yeah,
that's not going to do it. That's not going to cut it in tough times. I mean, I'm always like,
no,
my why. I'll give the shortened version of it.
sure.
I think most business owners are working way too hard for much too little, and so I try to help them, figure out how to get more, whether that's finances or meaning and purpose and everything else. Try to get
Yep,
more of that out of their business, and so I just keep it, but it's about them. It's not about me,
correct,
and that
correct.
a good why. So I appreciate you kind of going there. That brought in just
Yeah, for
another
sure.
nugget for everybody.
Yeah, if you can't answer that, you need to get there first.
Yeah, yeah, very good, very good. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for your time. Really, really
Of
appreciate
course,
it.
John.
Any if folks are interested in the mining industry, I guess they can
Sure.
reach out to
Yes.
you? And
Yes. They, of course, you reach out to me. Both Keaton and I are all over LinkedIn, Instagram, kind of every major social media platform. So please feel free. We also, Turner Mining Group has a website, turnermining.com. Turner Staffing Group has a website, turnerstaffing.com. You'll see our teams. There's a ton of ways to get in contact with us, but we love it when people reach out to us. So yeah, they're more than welcome to.
that's awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today. This has been, like I said, this has been a masterclass for folks, and I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked it, please share or like it on whatever platform you use. You can find me on social media. On most platforms, I'm John K. Jennings. My first book is also available. Your Baby is Ugly tells you about 10 truths that business owners need to hear, but often won't, and how to overcome them. You can find it on Amazon. Just search for Your Baby is Ugly. And be watching for our next episode, where I'll interview another business owner who will share their stories and insights into what it's like to create a great business.